Section 1. Follow the money, oil's hidden hand. If you want to understand the last century of power, you must follow the money. And for more than 100 years, the money has flowed from a single, dark source: crude oil. This is not just a story about fuel. It is the story of how a sticky, black liquid bubbling from the ground reshaped nations, built empires, decided the fates of millions. Oil became the lifeblood of industry and the ultimate prize of geopolitics. Control over its flow meant control over the world itself. Armies marched, navies sailed, and governments rose or fell based on their access to this essential resource. This essay will trace that hidden hand of oil. We will explore how its discovery and exploitation did more than just power cars and light homes. It fundamentally transformed the nature of state power. The story involves ambitious entrepreneurs, powerful corporations, shrewd financiers, and calculating politicians. Each player sought to secure a piece of the immense wealth and strategic advantage that oil promised. Their actions created a new world order, one defined not by old allegiances, but by the relentless logic of energy security. We will examine the rise of the giant corporations that came to dominate the industry. These companies were not just businesses, they were instruments of national policy, often working hand in glove with their home governments. The profits they generated fueled the economies of Western powers, while the resource itself powered their military machines. The lines between corporate interest and national interest became irrevocably blurred, creating a powerful nexus of money and force. The struggle for oil-shaped borders, particularly in the volatile Middle East. The patterns of power, the lines on the map, the sources of international tension are all, in large part, a legacy of this century-long scramble for black gold. By following the money, we uncover the true mechanics of modern power. Section 2. The Blueprint of Power, From Wells to Empires. This journey will follow a clear path, linking economic incentives to political and military decisions. We will show the desire to secure a reliable, cheap supply of oil that drove nations to aggressive foreign policies. The logic was inescapable. Modern economies couldn't run without oil. Modern militaries couldn't either. Any nation with imperial ambitions had to ensure access to oil fields, anywhere. A new kind of colonialism emerged, focused on controlling resources through compliant local leaders, unequal contracts, the constant threat of intervention. We'll use focused case studies. Great Britain recognized the shift from coal to oil, used its navy, used its financial might to secure Persian oil fields. We'll analyze the rise of the United States and how corporations like Standard Oil became entwined with national power. We'll connect oil and war. The need to fuel tanks, airplanes, and battleships became central to strategy in World War I and World War II. Control battles in Romania, the Caucasus, and the Middle East were as critical as frontline fights. During the Cold War, oil regions became superpower flashpoints. The 1953 coup in Iran, the 1956 Suez Crisis, show how the West protected energy interests, redrawing the Middle East. Ultimately, the modern world was built on oil. The story isn't over. The legacy still shapes our present and will influence our future. Understanding how oil built 20th century superpowers gives perspective on the challenges of energy, security, power in the 21st century. The past provides a blueprint for the present. Section 1. From whale oil to kerosene, a new light for the world. For centuries, the world ran on muscle, wind, water. Light came from expensive candles or smelly whale oil lamps, a luxury few could afford. But in the mid-19th century, innovators discovered that crude oil could be refined into something extraordinary: kerosene. This new fuel was cheap, abundant, and burned with a bright, steady flame. It democratized light, pushing back the darkness in homes and workplaces. Suddenly, the day did not have to end when the sun went down. This initial demand for illumination was the spark that ignited the global oil industry. The first commercial oil well, drilled in 1859, set off a frenzy, a black gold rush. The primary challenge was not just finding the oil, but getting it from the well to the consumer. This required a whole new infrastructure of barrels, pipelines, and refineries. As kerosene lamps replaced whale oil, they also inadvertently saved the whales from being hunted to extinction. The world was trading one extractive industry for another. Section 2, the engine of change, from lamps to locomotion. The kerosene lamp had made oil desirable, but it was the internal combustion engine that made it indispensable. Engineers like Carl Benz developed engines that could turn the explosive power of refined petroleum into motion. The advent of the automobile, pioneered by figures like Henry Ford, transformed society. They required gasoline, a light, volatile byproduct of kerosene refining once seen as waste. This technological leap created a seismic shift in demand. Military planners noticed. Navies led the change. Oil-burning warships were faster, had much longer range, and could be refueled at sea. In 1912, Winston Churchill decided to convert the Royal Navy from coal to oil. That act made oil a strategic asset. National security now depended on oil security. Demand became geopolitical. Governments hunted oil beyond their borders. Great powers had to find and control vast new reserves to fuel industrial and military ambitions. Section 3. The first scramble: capital, concessions, and control. The soaring demand from industries and navies transformed the search for oil into a global treasure hunt. To operate in these lands, oil companies needed permission. This led to the birth of the concession system. A concession was a legal agreement, often signed with a local ruler, granting a foreign company the exclusive right to explore, drill, and export oil from a vast swath of territory for a very long time. These deals were incredibly one-sided. These concessions were the foundational documents of a new kind of informal empire. They effectively signed away a nation's most valuable natural resource for generations. To secure these favorable terms, oil companies used diplomatic pressure, leveraging the power of their home governments. The flag of commerce and the flag of the state were now flying side by side. The British backed William Knox Darcy's venture in Persia. The Americans pushed into Mexico. The Germans sought their own path through the Ottoman Empire. These early moves established the basic template for oil geopolitics. Private capital would take the risk, but it would be backed by the diplomatic and, if necessary, military power of the state. Section 1. The Titans of Oil. Rockefeller and the Rise of Standard Oil. The oil industry was born in chaos. Out of this disorder emerged a man with a vision for order, control, and immense profit. John D. Rockefeller. He saw that the true power lay not in drilling, but in refining and transportation. By controlling the middle of the supply chain, he could dictate terms to everyone else. In 1870, he founded the Standard Oil Company. His methods were ruthless. He secured secret preferential rates from the railroads, allowing him to undercut his competitors and drive them out of business. By the 1880s, his Standard Oil Trust controlled about 90% of the oil refined in the United States. Standard Oil was more than just a company. It was a private, economic empire. Section 2. The empire's company, Royal Dutch Shell and British Power. While Rockefeller consolidated his power in America, a new rivalry was brewing across the globe. Royal Dutch discovers significant oil fields. Marcus Samuel began shipping Russian kerosene to Asia. In 1907, they joined forces to create the Royal Dutch Shell Group. It provided Britain with exactly what it needed, a corporate giant capable of competing with Standard Oil. It was a perfect fusion of corporate ambition and geopolitical strategy, creating an oil empire that spanned the globe. When the guns of August roared to life in 1914, the world's armies still marched on foot and were supplied by horse-drawn wagons. But as the Great War bogged down, a new kind of conflict emerged. It was a war of machines. All these new weapons had one thing in common: they were powered by the internal combustion engine, and they all ran on oil. The Allies, particularly Britain and France, had a significant advantage. They controlled the seas, which allowed them to import vast quantities of oil from the United States. For the Central Powers, especially Germany, the situation was dire. Germany had almost no domestic oil production. This oil starvation crippled the German war effort. As the fighting ended, their attention turned immediately to the oil-rich lands of the defunct Ottoman Empire. The borders of these new states were drawn not according to ethnic or historical lines, but to serve the strategic and economic interests of the European powers. In 1928, the major oil companies of Britain, France, and the United States came together. Under the famous Red Line Agreement, the partners agreed to act as a cartel, effectively locking out any competition. World War II confirmed oil's supremacy as the ultimate resource of modern warfare. Strategic thinking revolved around a simple, brutal calculus: securing their own oil supplies while denying them to the enemy. This weakness shaped Germany's grand strategy. Hitler invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, largely to seize the Caucasus oil fields. Japan relied on imports. Over 80% of its petroleum came from the United States. The US imposed a full oil embargo. Faced with abandoning empire or going to war to secure oil, Japan chose war. The Allies had access to near-limitless oil. That energy advantage let them outproduce and outmaneuver the Axis. Section 4, the coup and the canal, Cold War flashpoints. In 1951, Mohammad Mossadegh electrified his nation by nationalizing the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. In 1953, the CIA, with British intelligence, orchestrated Operation Ajax to undermine Mossadegh's government. Just 3 years later, another oil-fueled crisis erupted at the Suez Canal. In 1956, Egypt's charismatic nationalist leader, Gamal Abdel Nasser, nationalized the canal, a vital artery through which most of Europe's oil passed. The Suez Crisis marked the end of Britain's role as a major Middle Eastern power and confirmed America's new position as the ultimate arbiter of the region's fate. Section 1. The Oil Kingdom. A pact of power and protection. The U.S. would provide military protection and political security for the Saudi royal family, and in return, Saudi Arabia would ensure a stable flow of oil to world markets. For decades, the global oil market was completely controlled by a handful of Western companies known as the Seven Sisters. They decided how much oil to produce, where to sell it, and at what price. Section 2. The Rise of OPEC, a counterweight to empire. This growing assertiveness culminated in the formation of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, in Baghdad in 1960. Then, in October 1973, the Yom Kippur War erupted. In response to U.S. support for Israel, the Arab members of OPEC declared an oil embargo. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The price of oil quadrupled almost overnight. The oil weapon had been unleashed, and it proved to be incredibly powerful. The 1973 oil crisis marked a historic transfer of wealth and power. The old imperial system was shattered. A new era of oil geopolitics had begun. Section 1. The Black Thread. Oil's enduring legacy. The story of the last century is inextricably woven with a black thread of oil. It fueled industries, it powered armies, it reshaped the nature of power itself. That legacy isn't a relic, it's the living architecture of our present, visible in alliances, visible in conflicts, visible in inequalities that define international relations. As the world confronts climate change and begins a slow, arduous transition to new energy, new geopolitical contests emerge over resources of the future, such as lithium and rare earth minerals. Players may change, and commodities may differ, but the struggle for energy, for power, for control remains. Ultimately, oil's history is a cautionary tale. It shows that the flow of energy is inseparable from the flow of power. As we look to a new energy future, the lessons from the century of oil about the nexus of money, power, and resources will be critical to shaping a more stable, equitable world order.